Somebody's echoing.
Nope, that was me. Apologies.
Oh. Could you join me for the flag salute, please?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please, Buffy.
Councilmember Conley,
Present.
Councilmember Losi,
Here.
Councilmember Mobley. Here. Mayor Pro Tem Johnson,
Here.
Mayor Trent.
Here. Now we have a presentation of fiscal year 22-23 mid-year budget review. Presentation by Finance Director Aaron Fimley.
All right, well, thank you, and good evening, Honorable Mayor and City Council. So I am pleased to present to you guys the fiscal year 22-23 mid-year budget review. So the intent of this report and discussion is to review the activities for the first half of this fiscal year, in this case, July through December of 2022, and to provide a revised projection of revenues and expenditures to fiscal year end. This will enable staff and council to make more informed decisions through the remainder of this fiscal year, as well as we begin to prepare for the fiscal year 23-24 budget. Mid-year is also a good time to review actual results from prior fiscal years, and so we'll take a look at those as well. And then the formal submittal of a review during the fiscal year provides an opportunity to identify and present any fiscal problem areas to the council and to recommend any corrective action or additional funding if necessary. Tonight, as part of this discussion, staff is not recommending making any budget adjustments to the current adopted budget. Any proposed changes by staff will come before council as a separate item to be approved at a later date. So getting right into it, before we look at the current fiscal year's numbers, I wanted to look at last fiscal year, so fiscal year 21-22. Our auditors have not quite finalized their audit, so there may be some minor changes, but we don't anticipate.
Recording in progress.
We don't anticipate any changes at this point. So compared to, let's see. There we go. So compared to last fiscal year, our recurring revenues, which includes main contributors such as sales tax, property tax, and transient occupancy tax, increased by 7%. So it followed what we've been seeing as far as inflation. However, our largest revenue contributor, sales tax, only increased by 1.7% year over year. And I'll show you a graph of where our sales tax is and talk about that a little bit more at a future slide. But overall, total sources of funds for the city's general fund increased by nearly $1.6 million, and that was primarily due to the American Rescue Plan, or the ARPA payment that the city received. And then just kind of looking at the bottom line here, in the middle column, fiscal year 21-22 actual activity, we had a $936,000 surplus. There are a couple of adjustments that I wanted to note as part of that. So the first is that $885,000 of that surplus was American Rescue Plan Act funds. So since those are reserved specifically for the pod project, or they were included in the budget last year for the pod project, we want to take those out to get a better idea of how much actual adjusted surplus funds we have available. And then the second adjustment is the council authorized a CalPERS additional discretionary payment that used the prior fiscal year surplus numbers. So we add that back in to get the net adjusted amount for fiscal year 21-22 of $750,000. And so half of that surplus was due to sales tax coming in over budget, and the other half was due to our transient occupancy coming in over what we had budgeted. So it's really nice to see those revenues coming over budget, but we don't anticipate that happening in future years, as I'll show you here on the next slide. So I would recommend keeping that $750,000 amount in mind as we kind of go on through other agenda items here and in future council meetings. Some potential uses that staff will be recommending for that surplus is making a PERS additional discretionary payment once again. And so we'll be working with our PERS actuary over the next month or two, and then we'll bring forward a recommendation to council once we get those actuarial numbers put together. And then the second would be utilizing them for the pod project, which we'll be talking about later at this meeting. So just real quick, I kind of wanted to show where our sales tax revenues have been trending, since this is our largest revenue source for our general fund. And so you can see 18-19, fiscal year 19-20, they were at about 1.8 million, kind of steady increases. And then we had the big increase, primarily due to the COVID stimulus monies that were infused into the economy, as well as people purchasing things instead of going out and purchasing services. And so those monies and that kind of activity held strong for the last couple of years. However, you can see it has dipped down here in fiscal year 22-23. And this is our latest estimate from our sales tax consultants, whom we meet with quarterly. And so they're projecting about 2.15 million, which is nearly what we have budgeted. So in the past, as part of our budget study sessions, we've taken the conservative approach in estimating what we think our sales tax revenues will come in. And so this year, it really has paid dividends because they're anticipating that sales tax will come in at about where we have budgeted. So if we had gone with their original estimates, they were originally estimating about 2.35, we would have been having to cut $150,000, $200,000, or we would have had that loss here in this fiscal year. So I just wanted to point that out. So now looking at our current fiscal year numbers, so in the middle column, you can see percentage of budget. That's kind of, generally we want to see that at about 50%. If you go to the very bottom, you can see our total is 55%, so we're a little bit ahead of that 50% marker. Our going back up to the top, property tax and property tax in lieu, those come through in 2 installments from the county, typically one in January and one at the end of the fiscal year, received from the county. We have yet to receive our first installment from the county. However, we did have a meeting with a property tax consultant, and they, because of property values increasing, estimated a $40,000 increase for this year's property tax receipts. So that was nice to see. We talked about sales tax on the last slide, but you can see it's coming in right as we had budgeted. Our franchise fees, you can see a slight decrease. That's just kind of a continued trend that we're seeing, and that's from our cable TV franchise agreement. It just seems like less people are subscribing to cable TV. The increase to Parks and Rec is primarily due to the increased skate revenue that was brought forward to council back in November. That also adjusted the part-time recreation hours, and I'll talk about that on the next slide. And then other revenues increased primarily due to the American Rescue Plan Act. We got the second installment in July. We had budgeted for it in June, but because of that timing, it showed up in this fiscal year instead of last fiscal year. And so that's why there's such a large increase in other revenues on this slide. So going to the expenditure side of things, we can see that most of our departments are, again, within that 50% mark that we want to see. The police department at 55%, that is understandable. They have some large one-time payments that are made at the beginning of the fiscal year. And so we won't see those the rest of the fiscal year. So 55% is right on par, taking into account those large one-time payments at the beginning of the fiscal year. The one exception that you'll see on this slide is, of course, the Parks and Rec Department with the $60,000 estimated increase. That is primarily due to the part-time recreation budget. And I did want to note that $26,000 of that was authorized at the November council meeting, and then $12,000 is going to come before you at the next council meeting, and that is for a play group that's being funded through a grant, and so that'll be offset by grant revenue. So that left about $20,000 that finance was projecting the recreation going over budget. We did talk with our Parks and Rec director, and he's well aware of the council's desire to stay within that budgeted amount, and he's gonna do all he can to make sure that he stays within that budget. But I just was looking at projections, so I wanted to kind of show you what the estimated amount was there. And as stated before, if for some reason we do need to change the budget, that will be brought forward as a separate item at a future council meeting. So overall, general fund expenditures are on pace to exceed the city's original estimates by $59,000. But otherwise, we're looking pretty steady and where we thought we were going to be at the beginning of the fiscal year. So this slide just kind of brings them all together, the revenues and the expenditures, as well as the transfer in from other funds, which is Measure E. And so you can see going down to the bottom, net sources from our adopted budget, we had anticipated a $24,000 surplus. And here at mid-year, we're estimating a $261,000 surplus. And that is primarily due to increases in our transient occupancy tax, property tax, as well as our successor agency loan. We got a little bit of an increased amount from that. So that was nice to see. So that was for our general funds. I just want to quickly run through our enterprise funds, which is water and wastewater. Both of these funds are run very similarly. Both of them have not had any rate increases since fiscal year 2010, 2011. And so revenues have stayed pretty level, and we've only seen increases based on new developments that have occurred within the city. And so you'll see there are some operation savings, and that's primarily due to salary and benefit savings from vacancies that have occurred throughout this first half of the year. And then just going to the bottom line, we're estimating a $239,000 deficit. However, the projects, which is included as $755,000 in this, is paid for from our Water Capital Reserve Fund, which currently has $5 million in it. So we're looking good still in our fund balance for projects in the water fund. And then jumping here to the wastewater fund, again, similar story. Charges for services stay pretty similar year to year since there's been no rate increases. Going to the bottom, we do have a deficit of $332,000. However, $775,000 of that is paid for from our wastewater capital reserve fund, and that has a balance of about $9 million. So still have a healthy reserve fund to do our projects that we have anticipated through the next few years. So to wrap up the presentation, I just wanted to kind of go over the next steps in our budget process. And so on March 21st, our Measure E committee will be meeting, and that's where our departments will bring forward their recommendations to the committee, and then they'll reconvene on April 4th to whittle the list down and make their final recommendations that will be presented to the council and included in the proposed budget. And then in late April and early May, we'll schedule a couple of special budget workshops with the city council, and we'll run through each department's requested budget and discuss any things that we think are big items that we need to discuss with the council. And then on June 5th, we'll bring it forward at a regular council meeting for adoption. So With that, I'm happy to answer any questions on the mid-year budget report that was included in the council packet. Thank you.
Thank you for that presentation. It was good. Does council have any questions?
I do.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Aaron. With the fiscal year 21-22 surplus of $936,000, minus the payments that'll be coming out of that, leaves a surplus of about $750,000. And one of the things that you mentioned were the ADP, or additional payments, to bring down that PERS liability. I'm thinking that with regard to the police department, just my opinion, I think we want to hold off on making that additional payment until we find out and get into the construction of the new police department and know exactly, or better down the road, as to what those costs are going to end up being. Just a suggestion. And I know that it is a benefit to pay the additional PERS payments, but we might be way over with regard to the budget and remodel of the police department. That's one thing. I'd like to go to the general fund revenues and talk for a minute about that. You had it on the screen. With regard to the sales tax, it shows year-to-date through the end of December is $718,000 and some odd dollars, and that's 33%. That seems lower than the percentage that we've talked about and that our tax consultants have provided us. So, and knowing right now, we've got, of course, January and February to add on to the taxes. Do you know if the last 2 months have brought that, certainly has brought it up, but is the rate getting to where we really need it to get to that percentage?
Yeah, that's a good question. And so with our sales tax, we do receive those 2 months behind when they actually get collected from the state. So that $718,000 number is actually only 4 months worth of sales tax payments from the state. So for that one, 33% is right where we want to see it, because it's 4 out of the 12 months. So because that is received 2 months behind, we don't get our last payment for June until August typically, and then we'll accrue it back into June. But
And figure, so it looks like we're on track with that.
we are, yep.
And then going down to the Parks and Rec, at 58%, and again, this is through December. Do you have, or has Cameron given you an idea as far as how the rest of this fiscal year for the next 6 months might come out? I know that there's going to be a deficit in that particular item.
Yeah, I think the only indication we have is, the big boon for the Parks Department really has been the high participation in the skate program, and that's where they've been generating a lot of the revenue. And that's what was explained to the council before, and all indications are that they still are having it well attended. I think it was 2 weeks ago, they had 350 people over the course of a weekend. So it seems like their revenues from that skate program are going to continue to be pretty high. It's been a very popular program.
Good. Okay, we like to see that. We like to see those numbers coming up. That's all I have on that. Thank you, Aaron.
Mike Johnson? No? No one else has any? Get back to my...
Thank you. You covered that really well.
Thank you. Now we'll have oral comments from the public. Anybody who has anything to say that's not on the agenda? Seeing none, we'll move on. Consent calendar, we have 6 items. City Council minutes, report of disbursements, ratifying the Fortuna Fire Protection District Ordinance, supplemental budget request for demolition of the Monday Club chimney, supplemental budget request to recognize grant funds for solar permitting software, and amend the city's annual fee schedule for fiscal year 22-23 to provide for amended rental rates for the use of the River Lodge and the Monday Club. Does anybody want to pull any of them?
Yes.
Okay,
I'd like to pull C, please.
see. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, well, the sections, there are several of the sections in the ordinance itself. Let me turn to it here. And bringing your attention, and the pages aren't numbered, but bringing your attention to section 9, and that's authority to arrest and issue citations. And that ends on that same page at the bottom of section 9. Then the top of the next page should be section 10, I'm thinking, but there isn't any section 10 listed. There's no title as to what that next section covers. But in reading that, it sounds like it goes into liens and the areas available to the city when it comes to people not paying their assessments and receiving citations or whatever. Since, and I'm thinking this could just be a clerical error, I don't know.
Yeah, and I don't have the answer in front of me. This was provided by the fire district, and we put it into our format, and, I'm not seeing it, and clearly there should be a section 10, so I think we're gonna have to bring this one back unless Gary has a text, but right now it's too late for me to find that and bring it back in the council meeting, so.
And then there are other sections, and I'm not sure, that aren't included, because we start out, it looks like, with section 7. And I think that there could be others that need to be input, or maybe they are just sections that are not going to be included in the ordinance.
So my recommendation would be that we continue this item to the next city council meeting.
Okay, so we're not
And we'll
on a
review it.
time crunch or anything for that?
No, because I think it does defer to the state building code and fire code if it's not adopted. So really similar to our building codes, if we make changes, they're important to be in there. So we'll have to confer back with the fire district. Again, they provided us this text. I didn't see that typo, so, yeah.
I think it'd be important to include
Yeah.
that then. Okay. And I will go ahead and make a motion to approve consent calendar items A, B, D, E, and F.
I'll second.
Is that an all in favor one or a vote one?
It'll be all in favor.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, now we need a motion to continue number C to next meeting.
So moved.
And I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, our first item of business is a public hearing, second reading, to consider repealing and replacing Title 15, Building and Construction Division, General Chapter 15.10, Building Codes with the 2022 California Code as mandated by the California Building Standards Commission and Department of Housing and Community Department Ordinance number 2019-741, and this is our second reading, so we will, council have any more questions on this? No?
Make a motion.
Well, I have to open public hearing first. Okay, open public comment. Seeing none, close public comment. Okay.
I make a motion, we hold the second reading and adopt ordinance 2023-758 and read by title only.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion, and a second. Roll call, please.
So ordinance 2023-758, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Fortuna repealing and replacing Title 15, Buildings and Construction, Division 1, generally Chapter 15.10, Building Code of the Fortuna Municipal Code with the 2022 California Building Codes. Councilmember Conley?
Aye.
Councilmember Losi?
Yes.
Councilmember Mobley?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Johnson?
Yes.
Mayor Trent?
Yes. Okay, our next item is a public hearing to consider approving the substitution of a subcontractor for the apparent low bidder on the police facility project. Staff report. Merritt, do you want to start with that?
Yeah, so our Public Works Director, Brennan Bird, will give this one, and I just have a few words to say before the next item.
Okay.
Good evening, Mayor Trent and City Council. I have a PowerPoint I'm going to bring up here, so if you'll bear with me for one moment. And here we go. All right. So it's my pleasure to be here tonight to present a few items pertaining to the city's police facility project, the first of which is a public hearing to consider a subcontractor substitution. And we will jump right in. So I have here a recent project timeline. I would like to note that, again, this is the first of two staff reports in regards to the project. In our next one, Merritt will be jumping into a little bit more of the background and the timeline of this project, as it has been one of tremendous need for the city for some time, and there's quite a story to tell, and really this is a monumental moment that we're here tonight with the project, and it's very exciting. But we do need to start a little bit with kind of the brief background that's relevant to this staff report before jumping into its content. So I call it the recent project timeline. In the last 3 years, approximately in 2019, the city was able to identify and initiate the property acquisition for the site at 2600 Newburgh Road, which is the former Eureka Physical Therapy building. After that, in the following year, the city procured a design consultant, and in the fall and winter began the final design process to put together engineering plans that we could ultimately bid as a project for the police facility remodel. That design was completed in the fall of 2022. And on January 5th of this year, the city opened bids. We had 3 bids, which we'll talk about in the subsequent staff report. And the low bidder was found to be Sequoia Construction Specialties. Staff do, at the time of the bid opening, some verification of different information, registration numbers for prime contractors, completeness of the bid proposal, things of that nature. But after a more detailed review following the initial bid opening, where we identified Sequoia as the low bidder, staff did find that 2 of Sequoia's listed subcontractors on their subcontractor form were found to have expired Department of Industrial Relations licenses, and Department of Industrial Relations will be shortened to DIR in the future. So if I say that, that's what that's in pertinence to. So when staff found that, first thing we did was notify Sequoia Construction of the error in their bid and begin a dialogue with them. And the second thing the city did was engage our on-call public contract code attorney who specializes in this type of law for legal assistance and to provide a recommendation moving forward. So in initiating a dialogue with Sequoia Construction, they did indicate that the inclusion of those contractors in their subcontractor list was due to an error that they were unaware of. So in working with our public contracting code attorney, we did identify a code section, and subsequently Sequoia Construction proposed to perform a subcontractor substitution pursuant to Public Contract Code section 1771.1, item C, in which they are allowed to do so if a a subcontractor on their bid is listed in error and that they want to perform a substitution so long as one of the following areas applies. And I'll go down to item 3 here, which is that the subcontractor is replaced by another registered subcontractor pursuant to section 4107 of Public Contract Code. So Sequoia Construction initiated that dialogue and alerted the city that they would be interested in performing a subcontractor substitution in order to keep their bid what's called responsive. So a little bit on the steps to perform a subcontractor substitution. There's 2 main items that need to be led by the contractor that is requesting it themselves. First, they need to provide written notice to the city regarding their intent to perform said substitution, and they need to do so within 2 working days, and they need to provide notices to the subcontractors of interest, both the one to be replaced and the intended one for the substitution. Sequoia Construction did that within the timeline required. After that, the subcontractor who is to be removed from the project has 6 days to provide a written objection should they feel that it is unwarranted. In this particular case, that subcontractor did not elect to do so, and therefore the next step in the process is that the prime contractor, the subcontractor listed in error, and the subcontractor that is to be added to the project all provide sworn affidavits to the city attesting to the error that was made as part of the bid, which all of the aforementioned contractors did, and they provided it within that 8-day timeline. So with all of that kind of paperwork in process, and this last bullet that's presented here in steps to complete the substitution is where we are tonight, and this is a direct excerpt from actually Public Contract Code section 4107.5, which states, the awarding authority shall, after a public hearing and in the absence of compelling reasons to the contrary, consent to the substitution of the intended subcontractor on that bid. So just as a quick item of note, and something we talked about with our Public Contract Code attorney, who unfortunately was not able to make it tonight, they are out of the country, but she did highlight an item at the end of that sentence saying specifically the consent to the substitution. The interpretation of the code and case law does establish that, you know, the point of Public Contract Code is to ensure that public funds get spent, you know, in the best possible use, and that cities and agencies are, you know, getting the lowest price to get bid services as part of projects and contract code. So the wording in there, consent to the substitution, is also really a testament to the fact that this is a normal process and it's meant to be navigated cleanly by subcontractors and contractors in error in order to rectify situations such as these. So I do also want to acknowledge that while we were working through all these items with our, you know, with our Public Contract Code Council and with Sequoia Construction, the city did also receive a bid protest from the number 2 bidder, which in this case was Adams Commercial General Contracting. They submitted a bid protest on the grounds of the DIR registrations that were listed in Sequoia Construction's bid. We provided this bid protest as well as the response we received from Sequoia to our Public Contract Code attorney, who after a review of all the information found that the protest lacks merit, similarly based on the following section of code, which is actually the same one we looked at before, which is stating that an inadvertent error in listing a subcontractor who is not registered pursuant to section 1725.5 in a bid proposal shall not be grounds for filing a protest or considering a bid non-responsive, provided that any of the following apply. And again, I'll go down to item 3, which states the subcontractor is replaced by another registered subcontractor pursuant to section 4107 of Public Contract Code. So with that, Sequoia Construction has provided all the paperwork that they need to perform the subcontractor substitution. We have verified that their proposed substituted subcontractor is in fact registered. And after this public hearing tonight, it's the city's Public Contract Code attorney's recommendation that the city proceed with the approval of the subcontractor substitution, as they have provided all of the paperwork that they need to, and the bid protest does not have merit to move forward at this time. So with that, I just kind of wanted to close out by saying, you know, the city was put in an interesting spot with this, trying to navigate Public Contract Code and make sure that we dot all our I's and cross our T's and, you know, do things to make sure that we're, you know, navigating all these things correctly. Obviously, it's an interesting situation to be in, to work in between two contractors in this particular case. We feel confident with the review that we've had that, you know, the recommendation that staff is making tonight and that we received from our attorneys are the correct one. I would also like to note we have here tonight our city attorney, who aided in putting together the resolution that you'll see as part of the staff report, and who also helped assist in the development of the staff report too. I just would like to note that, his role in this was to, help interpret and to provide information on the legal opinion that we received from the Public Contract Code attorney specifically, who could not be here this evening due to a vacation. So with that, I'll end with the recommended action, which is that staff recommend that the council approve a request by Sequoia Construction to substitute a subcontractor pursuant to Public Contract Code Section 1771.1 and adopt Resolution 2023-04. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions, and like I had mentioned, our city attorney is here tonight to help support those as well. So thank you.
Thank you. Council have any questions? Oh, I know you do.
Not so much a question as just for Ryan. Just to verify that you're in agreement as far as the timeframes that were involved here were met and were within the code limits?
That's correct. I've reviewed all the information as well as Claire Gibson, our public contracting code attorney, as well as the bid protest, and believe her recommendation is the correct one.
Thank you.
I have to do public hearing.
No, I wasn't doing that.
Oh, I thought you were going to make a motion.
No.
Okay.
I was just going to say, it looks like you guys have thoroughly gone over it. I know Claire Gibson has worked with the city before, and she's very thorough, very methodical, and I appreciate all the work you both have done.
No other questions? Okay, open public comment. Close public comment. Do we have a motion?
I'd like to make a motion to approve a request by Sequoia Construction Specialties to substitute a subcontractor pursuant to Public Contract Code Section 1771.1 for the City of Fortuna Police Facility Remodel Project and adopt Resolution 2023-04.
Second?
Okay, we have a second, our first and a second, and all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, our next item of business is probably the best one on the agenda. Award the contract and supplemental budget request. Oh, wait a minute, that's the wrong one. Is that the right one? Oh, no. Award the contract to Sequoia Construction for the police facility remodel project. Okay, now you want to do this one.
Thank you, Mayor Trent. So I just wanted to say a few words. Brendan has a staff report, and he'll be going into it in a little detail, but this has been a project that the city's worked for a long time just to get to this point. I just wanted to give a brief overview of the chronology. There's been a lot of councils and a lot of staff people and a lot of city managers and a lot of city attorneys who have been involved in this, and so this is kind of a milestone moment where we actually get to allocate the funds and go to construction. So just before we hand it to Brendan, I just wanted to share my screen and remind the council a little bit of the chronology for this project. So the police facility at City Hall was constructed in 1967 when the population in the city of Fortuna was 4,000. They had a massive expansion and added 4 new offices in 1994, which was their big project, I guess, over a period of almost 3 decades. In 2002 to 2007, there was a number of deficiencies that were really brought to the attention of the city through some post reports, and they had to do with things like evidence handling and an analysis of the facility to really look at the functionality of it for the size of the department and the way that it performed. And it was identified that they did need a new facility that met the current post standards. In 2007, the Fortuna Financing Authority obtained revenue bonds for $2 million, designated for a new police facility. And so at that time, shortly after, they purchased 280 12th Street, thinking that they could get the whole project done for $2 million. There was a needs assessment and an architectural analysis done for a new police facility, which would have been at the 280 12th Street site. And in 2015, the estimated cost for that facility that was identified was approximately $10 million. That'd probably be $20 to $30 million today. So At the time, the city had no real prospect for funding a project like that. And the biggest really outcome from that project was that that building needs to be demolished, that existing metal building that was at the Ford site that is now Creations. And it really, you know, it would have been taken down to nothing. And originally it was anticipated that that building could be remodeled and turned into a police facility, but it wouldn't meet seismic standards. So in 2015, the city chose not to proceed with that project at that site. The costs were too high, and to sell the land at 280 12th Street. So the land was finally sold in 2019. And then the city identified a new site in 2019 where the current facility is being planned near the intersection of Newburgh Road and Ronerville Road. And so the net cost of those two parcels, the one that was Eureka Physical Therapy and the adjacent vacant lot, was $775,000. This schematic design project was completed in 2020 that was really looking at, you know, the long-term build out of that site. And at the time, it was determined that a 13,000 square foot project would meet the needs of the department over the long term. But the cost would have been $5.5 million. And again, that was in 2020 dollars, and there's been a lot of escalation since then. Still a project that was really beyond the means of the city. So really what we did is took a closer look, tried to identify a lower cost option that the city could afford. And we looked at, you know, with working with an architect, we came up with a 6,500 square foot project with the cost estimate at the time was approximately $1.6 million. I guess one of the silver linings with the whole COVID pandemic was that the ARPA funds came through and they could be designated for this use. And so the council in 2021 put $2 million of the ARPA funding towards this project. And also contracted with Whitchurch Engineering for the architectural and design. In 2022, the project was advertised for bid, and so now we're just getting to the award now. And I just have to compliment our Public Works Director. He's really picked up the heavy lifting since we've gotten to the design phase of the project, and there's just been a lot of details to work through there. So soon we'll be in construction, I hope, and then really be able to complete this project that's been eluding the city for about 35, what's 67 minus 2022? It's a long time, 40 or plus years. So it you know, and it's really important for the well-being of the department. Fortunately, we've had that vacant building, you know, or not vacant building. We've had the shell from the old EPT, and they've been able to operate their patrol operations division. What the plan would be, if awarded, is to have everybody come back and do the best they can to work out of the existing facility while that one's under construction. So it would be very tight, but you know, we've had that space, and anyway, we're at the point where that needs to be remodeled, and it's just really key for morale of our police department to be able to serve the community, and it'll serve the community for a long time. And we're just pleased that we've been able to get it to a point where it is actually affordable for the city as well. So with that, I'll hand it over to Brendan.
Thank you, Merritt. Again, I have a PowerPoint to pull up here, so give me one moment. Okay. So, with that little bit of an introduction, which I really appreciate, thank you, Merritt, I would like to come tonight to recommend that the council award a construction contract to Sequoia Construction Specialties for the police facility remodel project. So as Merritt mentioned, and I mentioned, I guess, in the previous staff report, on January 5th of this year, we held a bid opening for the project as it was put out to bid and designed. And at that time, the city received 3 bids from 3, all excellent local contractors. We were very excited for that. And we found that Sequoia Construction Specialties was the apparent low bidder at the time. Now, I'm happy to say, with the completion of the last staff report item and the adoption of the resolution, Sequoia Construction Specialties is now a fully responsive bidder as well. And, staff can, wholeheartedly recommend that they are a responsive and an appropriate selection for the low bid contractor for the project. The other 2 contractors, Adams Commercial General Contracting and Beacom Construction, came in just around $200,000 and $500,000, $450,000 higher. It was a nice tight bid spread, which also is something you like to see. People are seeing the project similarly. People are hungry and wanting to get projects, so that's all good stuff too. So with that, I wanted to jump over to an estimated project budget, which a little bit of this is specific to the staff report item here tonight. A little bit of it is kind of a zoomed out view of the project as a whole. So I'm going to kind of walk through it piece by piece. So as I previously noted, Sequoia Construction's low bid came in at $2.53 million. So one of the items that we want to look at as we're proposing a contract award here tonight for this staff report, but also thinking about it from the big picture is, what are the additional costs that would be associated with delivering the project? So what we have here is a table that shows not only the projected cost that would go into Sequoia Construction's contract, but the additional work that staff is working with on the side that is going to be part of delivering. And that includes PG&E costs. We're going to have to go in and upgrade the service connection as part of the remodel of the facility, and we're anticipating between $50,000 and $100,000 to make that service upgrade. We're going to need to work with Nilex, who is the city's IT consultant, to transfer over servers and do all sorts of networking and other data and security camera items that will be involved under a contract with them. We'll have to work with Silky Communications, who is the city's communications contractor for radio equipment and dispatch equipment. And so we're going to need to move over all of our existing items from here, in addition to probably making some upgrades as well. We're anticipating for that to cost up to $150,000 currently. And then lastly, Whitchurch Engineering, as Meredith mentioned, they are the design consultant who we've been working with to develop the bid plans. We will retain their services in addition to their architect for services during construction, which can include design revisions and inspections and things of that nature. So going back up to Sequoia Construction's number up there, you'll see $2.92 million. That is what staff is proposing to be the maximum not to exceed contract amount for their contract, which includes an approximate 15% construction contingency of $382,000 on top of their base bid of $2.53 million. That contingency is within what is a generally usual range of 10 to 20% during construction. We tend to like to see those a little bit higher in projects that involve building remodels, things of that nature. There is always some level of uncertainty when you start to open up a building to see what you're going to find. And you always hope that things go according to plan, but sometimes they don't, and it's good to be prepared for that. So with all of these projected costs in mind, staff are anticipating a total project budget in and around approximately $3.325 million to deliver the whole project. And again, important to note about almost $400,000 of that right now is in contingencies. So going from the estimated budget over to kind of how we would fund that in this next section. As Meredith noted, that the city in the past, through the American Rescue Plan Act, was able to budget approximately $2 million for the project in the 21-22 budget. So that is kind of the money that everybody has agreed upon to be part of the facility at this point. So staff is proposing right now that we do an SBR that would bring that money into this fiscal year, and it would cover the costs of all contractors as it develops over this year for the remainder, and we anticipate that $2 million should be more than enough to fund all of those efforts. Moving forward, we would propose to work with council on gap funding during the fiscal year 2023-24 budget process. The remaining estimated project costs on top of the $2 million that would be budgeted through this SBR, the approximate $1.325 million is proposing to be covered by a number of sources that we're trying to identify right now, which includes the remaining $350,000 in American Rescue Plan Act funding that is yet to be put towards any specific project. Staff has also been working on pursuing Measure Z funding, and I believe our police chief has moved forward with completing an application for that. Staff is planning on taking this as a project request for Measure E, which could provide some funding in there as well. And I know specifically for the radio upgrades project that the police department has some asset seizure funds which they had earmarked for those communications upgrades in the past. That project did not move forward previously, recognizing that the remodel project was happening, and the thought was to do it all in one time. So there is some funding available for that as well. So that right now is our proposal of what to work through in the coming months to see how much additional funding we could bring towards the project. But alternately, I guess this is the worst case scenario if none of these other funding items come through, or if council chooses not to obligate the additional $350,000 in American Rescue Plan Act funding to it, that the worst case scenario would be the additional project costs of up to $1.325 million would come from general fund reserves. And I know that our finance director spoke to the, the projected general fund surplus in some other areas, to speak to the availability of that funding. By all means, if you have additional questions, he'd be a good resource for that. So moving forward, I just wanted to kind of be clear, because this is an interesting recommendation in some ways, or at least not as standard as we usually make them in projects. So tonight, staff is seeking authorization from council to award the contract to Sequoia Construction and to establish a maximum contract amount of $2.92 million, and to do a supplemental budget request in the amount of $2 million, which would fund project costs through fiscal year 22-23, and that would be project costs for Sequoia Construction, in addition to any project costs incurred in any of those other efforts that I had discussed that we're working on right now. Moving forward, staff would work to identify project gap funding through all those various sources that we had talked about, and staff will finalize that funding, with council engagement and approval during the 23-24 budget process. So with that, I'll end with my staff recommendation, which is the council authorize the city manager to award the police facility remodel contract to Sequoia Construction, establish a maximum contract amount of $2.92 million, and to authorize a supplemental budget request in the amount of $2 million. And with that, I am happy to answer any questions, or of course, we have this city manager who is a big part of this, as well as our finance director, and the police chief.
Thank you.
So thank you.
Does council have any questions? Mike?
Yes. Just to expound a little bit on the background here, the location at 280 12th Street, originally, that was going to be the police department on the one side where the showroom is located, and then the city garage brought from Dinsmore Drive to the other side, so it would be a combination, all city-owned, but city garage and police department. As it turned out, the estimate for the police department alone turned out to be over $11 million to remodel and bring that up to standards. And it just, at that point in time, was undoable. We were never going to get that amount of money. And I know city staff searched for grants and, some funding sources anywhere that they could look, and that just wasn't going to come across. So it was a good move to sell that. Creations Body Shop is a great location. It's a great addition to the city. And in my mind, the location there on Newburgh and Ronerville Road is a much better location and alternative. I think that's all I have to say, but I would be proud to make a motion whenever you are prepared for that motion, Madam Mayor.
Okay. Any other questions from council? Okay, I'll open public comment. Yes.
Lieutenant Everhart, I just want to say thank you. I think City Manager and Councilman Delosi did an excellent job recapping the history. I'm very happy as a member of the police department and the public to see this move forward. This has been a long time coming. I'm happy that this didn't die on the vine, and there's been a lot of effort by people that are here today and people that are not. So thank you for that, and thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, we'll close public comment. Go ahead.
I am proud to make a motion to authorize the city manager to award the police facility remodel project CIP 2104 or 9104 to Sequoia Construction Specialties and establish a maximum contract amount of $2,920,000 and authorize supplemental budget request for $2 million.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we're getting a new police station. Okay, our next item of business is to award a contract for a supplemental budget request for the Corporation Yard Emergency Generator Project. Staff report.
Excellent. Well, hello again. And I would also like to, here, I will need to share my screen once more. Don't worry, though, I did use the same PowerPoint background, so you'll be very familiar with me at this point. Oops. Apologies as I zoom through the past here. Okay. So here for business item 5D, which is the recommendation of award of a contract to Hooven and Reese, Inc., and approve a supplemental budget request for the Courtyard Emergency Generator Project. So a quick little bit of background on this project. The city has a number of essential facilities, largely our water and sewer and our wastewater treatment plant, where it's critical that we're able to provide services and to have power, no matter what the circumstance is, whether it's a power outage from an earthquake or, high winds, any of the number of different scenarios that we have been facing these days. Unfortunately, one of the main items that is, critical to be staffed and to have function of that we currently don't have emergency backup power is the city's corporation yard located at 190 Dinsmore Drive. That's where the city's utilities division and our streets division work out of. It's where our mechanic shops are that service all of our city vehicles. And when we have an outage there, we essentially at this time have a small generator we use to provide power for the data system that operates down at the courtyard and at the treatment plant, but the rest of the building itself remains out of power. So if we have a prolonged outage, the mechanics are pretty much stopped from doing all work unless it's done with hand tools. Any room that doesn't have good lighting or adequate natural lighting, I should say, is dark and it's hard to work in. We experienced with the earthquake recently, which happened in the middle of the night, and we had all of our employees, reporting to get ready to go respond to leaks all around the city at 2:30 in the morning when it was dark. Everybody's trying to run around with flashlights and headlamps to find anything they can because we don't have emergency backup power at the courtyard. So, in recent years, it has come to be a project. I know it has been included in some previous budgets with funding as a capital outlay item to get an emergency stationary generator so that it can be an operating facility at all times, whether the power is on or not. And so we had kind of set out to get that project done. I believe it was the 21-22 capital improvement program year and budget year. And sometime into that year, a grant opportunity came through the USDA that funds community infrastructure, especially for rural disadvantaged communities, and they fund 55% or up to $50,000 for projects of this type. So we decided to pause on spending city funds at that time and to apply for the grant to see if we could get some additional grant funding towards this project. We applied for it in early 2022, and we're fortunate to hear later that year that we did receive the grant, and so we decided to hold off at that time on the project and to include it in our 22-23 budget and capital improvement program. So after the authorization of the grant, we worked forward to get all that paperwork together. We developed a bid package, which we bid, I believe, in October or November of 2022. And on January 5th, actually right before the police facility project, we opened bids for this project, of which the city received two responsive bids, one from Hooven and Reese Inc., one from James Day Construction, and as you'll see, Hooven and Reese Inc. is the low bid at $80,000. I'd like to note that $80,000 is generally the anticipated cost that we had developed for the project previously, and it's what we had kind of included in our outline of the grant, so we feel that this is a good, reasonable bid from Hooven and Reese that we did receive. So moving on to the estimated project budget and how this project would be paid for. So as I mentioned, we did receive a USDA Rural Development Grant in the amount of $44,000. So that's grant funding that will go directly towards the project, which required a 45% city match in order to obtain. That 45% city match was actually $36,000. That's what we used to get the grant. Turns out that, we had originally estimated the project would be somewhere in the low 70s. The project ultimately bid in the 80s. That's what has been happening these days with generators and other things that have inflated in cost. So it's not, too unsurprising that would happen. So what you'll see here is staff is recommending a total funding amount of up to $90,000 for the construction contract, which would include the grant amount of $44,000, the amount the city would need to provide to match the grant, which is $36,000, and both of those equal 80, which would cover the base contract amount that we would enter into. And then staff would propose an additional $10,000 in funding, which would be used as about a 12.5% construction contingency. None of these items have currently been included in the fiscal year budget, as the uncertainty of receiving the grant wasn't really there when the budget was developed and the CIP was developed. So staff elected at that time, should we be successful with funding, we could bring it to the council as an item to add funding to the budget at the time of contract award, which is what we're doing here tonight. So with that, I'd like to close with my recommended action, which is that the council authorize the city manager to award the Corporation Yard Emergency Generator Project, CIP 9114 to Hooven and Reese, Inc., and establish a maximum contract amount of $90,000, and to approve a supplemental budget request to add the grant funding and then the city's matching funding to the budget this year. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Council have any questions? Councilman Losi?
No question.
Oh.
But just for those folks out in TV land and also present here, we've spent a lot of money and a lot of SBRs over the last couple of council meetings. So just to reiterate that almost half of this cost is coming from a USDA grant, and then the rest of the funding would be coming from enterprise funds, and nothing from the general fund or reserves.
Correct, yeah. The matching funds would come from Water and Sewer Reserve. This was an identified project, as I had mentioned before the grant, and at that time, the city had budgeted, I believe, $70,000 in the budget in CIP. It would be not this year, but the year before. So we were prepared to spend $70,000 of city funds to get this done because it is a critical facility. Now we're hoping to deliver this project for the city for as low as $36,000 of city funds using the grant.
Thank you.
And Councilmember Losi, if I could just, a couple of comments. You know, our USDA grant representative really came to us last year, I guess, or about a year and a half ago, and said, hey, there's an opportunity, there's a lot of money here. And I just want to say that staff really made a diligent effort to go after those funds. You know, we had previously used that to go after police vehicles, and we get a couple of police vehicles every few years. And in the last year, we've been able to get community development software, council chamber upgrades, Vector truck, I think cost sharing on 6 police vehicles. You'll see the next staff report that's coming up. The generators, you know, there's a number of projects, and it just, you know, it made sense to go after this, and it's really been a great source of funding for the city to be able to go after these.
Thank you, and thanks to staff for doing that and taking the initiative to go after these tax dollars for something that's really needed.
I just want to say, as someone who's worked in that building at night when there's no power and you got to go upstairs and search for water parts and bolt kits and valves, get the trucks out and signs, and this is going to be big. So thank you.
Yeah, you know, power outages never like to happen during daylight hours, so.
Leaks never happen in daytime hours either.
Okay, I'll open public comment. Anybody have any comments? I'll close public comment.
Make a motion to authorize the city manager to award the Corporation Yard Emergency Generator Project, CIP 9114 to Hooven and Reese Incorporated, establish a maximum contract amount of $90,000 and approve a supplemental budget request.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is that a voice or a roll call? Okay, we have a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, and our last item of business is a supplemental budget report for the purchase of 4 new police units.
Thank you, Mayor Trent and Honorable City Council. I think I'm back in cleanup, and I'm going to try to keep the momentum going here. So there's been a lot of questions asked of me in particular during end-of-year reports and different reporting to the council on something that has been a priority for council as well as the police department and city staff. So I'm happy to deliver some fresh information in regards to our previously approved budget project for the acquisition of 4 new police vehicles. And so currently, the city discovered an opportunity early last week to purchase 4 new Chevrolet Tahoe police packages from a dealership, a fleet dealership, Future Chevrolet in Sacramento, California. So tonight, we need to revisit a previously approved budget of $256,000 that was approved to buy 4 new Ford Police Interceptors. It was approved by council last April. And so before I get into it, I just want to talk about the climate. I've reported to council on several occasions the different challenges that, not only the Fortuna Police Department, but most public safety agencies are facing throughout California and the nation when it comes to acquiring these patrol vehicles. And, one of the biggest things, and I may have misemphasized in the past that it was just for Ford Motor Company, but a lot of these companies that are providing vehicles that are pursuit rated or police packages, they're all having the same problems, and a lot of it stems from the COVID-19 pandemic with supply shortages, chip shortages, over ordering was a big issue. And so taking the opportunities that are presented to acquire these vehicles, it's going to come and go. It's going to be ebb and flow. The sheriff's office just had their order of 8 Ford patrol vehicles canceled last week. So, as I've kind of dove into this over the weeks and months and, just collaborated with other agencies, I know that, several of the agencies right here in our own backyard are looking at other creative and collaborative ways to, kind of overcome some of those issues. So with purchasing outside of the Ford realm and looking at other makes and models. And so what we have available again to the city is 4 new Chevrolet police package Tahoes. They're a little larger of an SUV, but I think it will be a great addition to the fleet. So this project will actually require an overall increase in our original budget from approximately, the original amount was about $256,000 to about $340,916.88. And staff at this point is, strongly recommending that the city continue to prioritize this budget project for acquisition of 4 new vehicles and take advantage of the opportunity that we have at present. So with that, staff is recommending that council make a finding that sole source procurement of these vehicles is in the best interest of the city pursuant to section 2.50.080 of the Fortuna Municipal Code. And secondly, that the recommendation is that council approve a supplemental budget request in the amount of $340,916.68 to complete the purchasing and total outfitting of these new vehicles. The fiscal impact will absorb an increased budget amount of approximately $88,830.42, with $200,116.68 coming from asset seizure and $140,800 being funded from the USDA Community Facilities Grant from 21-22. And if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Thank you, Chief. Any questions or comments from council?
As I've seen how long and the ordeal that's taken so this is an opportunity that I don't think we want to miss because we don't know when we'd get to replace them.
Agreed. It's just, there's no trending that would lead myself or, an organization to see that there's going to be any type of change in the near future. It's just kind of the state of affairs that we live in.
Well, thank you for both of you guys for being diligent on this. It's not an easy thing to find and finance, so.
It's our pleasure.
Very creative.
Thank you.
No comment? No. Oh. Do you know how long it'll take to get these?
They are immediately ready for delivery.
And then how long does it take to get them on the street?
So they're a little bit different than the Fords. The Fords come with a ready-for-the-road package, and essentially we get the police packages from Chevy after they've left their specialty plant in Texas, and we install all of that here locally. So, it's really the time, Mayor Trent, that it takes our installer to get all the equipment in there, which has roughly been running somewhere between 1 to 3 weeks. He's actually pretty quick, and he does quality work. We've had nothing but success with the units that we have in the fleet. So you add on a couple of days for the installation of graphics and somewhere in that 2 to 3 week realm.
Good. That's exciting. We'll get those embarrassing ones off the street, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, anybody?
That's why I didn't have a comment. I've been saying it so many times.
I was
over the
waiting.
last 6 months.
Councilmember Losi, I thought you were going to talk about those. I know it is a pet peeve, but yes, we will be in a better situation to, rid some of the eyesores.
Good.
And
Any-
Mayor Trent, I just wanted to point out one other thing in the staff report too. We went through the police facility staff report, and that was completed before this one was done, but this one has a more accurate depiction of what the asset seizure fund is going to be. So in the previous staff report, it said there was 150, but that didn't include the balance that was going to be used for these vehicles. So I just wanted to relay to the council that there is a low asset seizure amount, and it has what the how much would be left, 4,000, until the city receives another distribution, which I think the chief could probably speak to, but we do expect more funds to be distributed from the asset seizure fund. So I just wanted to make sure the council was aware of that moving forward. This is accurate in the staff report, though.
Yeah, if I may, Mayor. So the DTF Executive Board will be discussing disbursements on Wednesday.
Oh, okay. Open public comment?
Lieutenant Matt Everhart again. Just wanted to say thank you again. Yes, very happy, Councilman Losi, to see the forest ground vents be rotated out soon. It's been a long time coming. Additionally, watching this come in over the last couple weeks, I can tell you that the chief and city staff worked really hard at making sure that this got done and we didn't miss this opportunity. And just myself as a member of the police department and fellow members of the police department are very grateful for that.
Thank you. Any other public comments?
I can't let Matt be the only member of the public to say something. My name is Walt Wilson, resident of Fortuna. I'm here with my wife Julie and along with Matt, we are the public. I don't know why more people don't attend these meetings, but I'm amazed at the hard work that this Fortuna staff and the council does for us. It's unreal. We are so lucky to have all of you. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And I will agree with that. Okay, we'll close public comment. Do we have a motion?
Too long. I make a motion to find that it is in public's interest to negotiate for the purchase of new police vehicles and not require competitive bidding. Authorize the sole source purchase of 4 Chevrolet Tahoe patrol vehicles from Future Chevrolet Fleet Center in Sacramento, California for a total cost of $240,916.68 and approve a supplemental budget request in the amount of $340,916.68 to complete the purchase of outfitting the new police vehicles.
Second.
Hey, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, city managers report.
Thank you, Mayor Trent. Just like to briefly review the upcoming meeting schedule dates. So our next regular council meeting will be on Tuesday, February 21st. I just wanted to make note that that's not a Monday. That'll be a Tuesday due to President's Day. And that'll be at 6 o'clock at the city council chambers at the regular time. Our next planning commission meeting is at February 14th, also at its regular time, 6 o'clock p.m. And our next Measure E committee meeting is a little ways out on March 21st at 5:30 p.m. And the next Roanoke Community Recreation and Park District, also a little ways out, is on March 1st, 2023. Just a few items to report for my city manager report. One, our Parks Director and myself and Finance Director have continued to assist the Roanoke Community Recreation and Park District. We're doing our best to come up with a framework that could be used to fund the pool, combination of an assessment benefit district and also some pretty significant donation and sustaining donations from the McLean Foundation. So we're starting to put some numbers to those. I met with Dennis Scott with the McLean Foundation last week, and then we'll be meeting with Senator McGuire to give him an update on the pool and also seek additional funding this Friday. I'd also like to report that I went to the Friends of Fortuna Library luncheon last Thursday, along with Councilmember Mobley. And it was really a great opportunity to hear what the library is doing, some of the programs that they're rolling out, and also to be able to be part of a brainstorming session for new opportunities for the library to expand their programs. We are still working on a Building Forward Library grant, and we have to turn in some more of the documentation necessary to finalize the grant agreement with the state. But right now, we're waiting on the county for a couple of things. One of those is an extended lease. They wanted to make some changes to the lease, and we need to demonstrate that the library will be there for the amount of time that is necessary. I think it was 10 years from the time that they give us the grant. And then also a letter of commitment for the additional funding above the grant amount from the county. So again, the city will have no funds being contributed by the city, just the city will be a pass-through for this program that's going to provide some needed upgrades, accessibility, solar energy, battery backup, Tesla batteries, and then reconfigurations to have better accessibility within the building. And then I'd like to say that FBID had its first meeting, another one that Councilmember Mobley, I hope I'm not taking all your items from your staff report, but they were able to meet and to seat the board that was chosen by that was approved by the council at the last meeting. So it's great to have that going. Our new FBID administrator, Morgan Dodson, is doing a wonderful job. She's got a lot of great ideas. One of the things that she's working on as well, I just want to report to the council, is that she's working with the Humboldt County Visitors Bureau. They're going to be putting together an exhibit in their First Street Gallery that will really feature some of the things in Fortuna and highlight Fortuna with an attempt to try to increase the tourism and the hotel stay at the city. So it's encouraging to hear our TOT, our transit occupancy tax, is going up, and I know that the Greater County and Visitors Bureau is going to be doing a good job in working with our administrator to do that. And then lastly, it's kind of a small thing, but one of the things that we were able to do really recently was to be able to connect all of our facilities to the AT&T fiber optic network. And so right now, our IT consultant is working to bring all the new equipment, now that we have fiber connected to all of our new buildings, the River Lodge, the Corp Yard, the wastewater treatment plant, the parks, we were experiencing a lot of delays. Our phone system runs through we had a wireless bridge coming from the park that had all kinds of problems. We also had one coming from the Corp Yard, and so now that's all connected by fiber. And so we're in the last stages of that project that Nilex, our IT consultant, and Sienna Emmons, our IT manager, have been working on. So it's going to be great to have that equipment in place and to have that seamless connection between all of our facilities. And also now when the power goes out of the Corp Yard, we'll still have connections there too. So a lot of good things happening, and that's all I have to report. Oh, and one other item, I will be gone this week at the League of California Cities City Manager Conference in Carlsbad, and I'll be leaving tomorrow, so I'll be available email intermittently and by phone, so I'll be out for the rest of the week at that conference.
Merit, that upgrade, will that make it easier for big events down at the park to be able to use?
Yeah, absolutely. It should alleviate a lot of the issues. We were using wireless connectivity to City Hall, and so there's a lot of things that can go wrong with that. So now it'll be seamlessly connected to the same server, so we won't have that vulnerability in the wireless connections.
And one other question. When our meetings are on Tuesdays, they're still televised, but it's on a different channel, isn't it?
That's a good question. Yeah, I see Buffy, our deputy city clerk, nodding.
Do you happen to know what channel it is?
I'm not sure of the channel. Usually they tell me that like that day. So
okay.
Sometimes it's 8 and sometimes it's 10. So.
Okay. I just wanted to let everybody know that, what?
Channel 11.
Thank you.
You almost got it, Buffy.
Voice behind the curtain.
Okay, now we'll move on to future agenda items. Any member of the council want to have a request or for a future agenda or agenda item? Nope. Okay, move on to council reports. Councilmember Conley.
Thank you, Mayor Tammy. I had my first Redwood Regional Economic Development Corporation meeting. It was good. It was good to kind of a informational meeting, so not a lot of action happened. It was good to hear about everybody's little district and kind of how things were coming along with the earthquake. And I know that we all know that Riedel got hit real hard, but when to hear it come out of someone's mouth and all the stuff that they just it was like one of those lists where they went, and all the, it just kept coming. So, but people stepped up in major ways and still are stepping up. Even the Southern Humboldt Water District down there offered to let them borrow their camera for their sewage system because they're still having problems with that. So that was a good meeting. Also, the fire on Main Street. Being a firefighter, I get to go and rush and do all that stuff, but I didn't go and notice that I got to drive past city vehicles and city cop cars, and that were there doing what they needed to do to make sure that we could do our job as firefighters to get that fire put out. It was one of those, oh crap, it happened real quick fire. But again, the response that we had from the city staff to help support that was amazing. So appreciate that. And then the couple things is dinner last night for the annual dinner, Saturday night for annual dinner. It was good to see Mr. Losey, Mrs. Trent, and Mr. Johnson there. So it was a good representative from the city. And then also just a deep regret for long-time community member Roy Corliss has just passed away too. So he was highly involved in the Fortuna Rodeo and all that stuff. So condolences to his family.
Thank you. Councilmember Mobley? Oh, no, Losey. Sorry. Just trying to get this meeting over faster.
So you're going to skip me? Well, like Merritt mentioned, the Roner Community Recreation and Park District meeting was on February 1st, and I went to that and heard a great financial analysis with some estimates on costs. They did a assessment benefit district update. They're narrowing or figuring a little bit better as to what that assessment might cost us taxpayers. And so it was a good meeting. There was a lot of good input on that. As Kyle said, I went to the annual fireman's dinner. It was a great dinner. And the fire chief did mention the excellent work that the police department did in routing the traffic around the fire so that his people could get in and fight that fire, like Kyle said. And so that was a good job. Congratulations to the Fireman of the Year, Jeremiah Covington. It was a great award and great dinner, and they presented all of the different awards to the different fire companies, and it was a great night had by all. I also echo the condolences for the passing of Roy Curlis. He was a great citizen, great member of the community of Fortuna. That's it.
Thank you. Councilmember Mobley?
On January 11th, I attended the Historical Commission meeting for Mike Johnson. I've never been to one before. I was very impressed at how well our museum curator talks about changing out the exhibits, things that happened during the earthquake, that she's putting things into place so we don't lose anything else. They do have a book for sale, In Around the Arena, 100-Year History of Fortuna Rodeo. If nobody's had the chance, you might want to go see them and look at it, either there or purchase your own copy. It's got a lot of great information and pictures in it. On January 18th, 19th, and 20th, I attended the New Mayors and Council Members Academy in Sacramento that was put on by Cal Cities. It was a lot of information crammed into 2.5 days. I do think Mike Johnson, he was very beneficial for me in answering a lot of my questions that I would have without having to take up more time there. January 26th, I attended the Redwood Coast Energy Authority meeting. Lasted quite a while. They start their year off trying to take care of a lot of things that are time sensitive. So it was a very lengthy meeting. I'm hoping that the future ones aren't that way, but we will see. I was unable to attend the FBID meeting because they conflicted. They were the same day, same time. So I have been trying to coordinate a time to meet with Morgan, but I do understand that it went really well, and she's very pleased with the turnout. On the 31st, I attended the Friends of the Library, Fortuna Library, as Merritt said. I would encourage anyone, if you've not had a chance to attend some of these meetings, to try to do it. It's amazing the input, what they do for our community the programs that they come up with that help from the youngest to the oldest. They mentioned that they had the last couple of years, they've had the highest turnout, and it was COVID. And they said that sometimes that was the only person that they had contact with was when they went to pick up their library books. So they do a great job down there as well. That's all I have.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Johnson?
Well, thank you for, and I'd say, as she said, we both ended up going to the new mayors and council members class. It was an intense training, covered a lot of territory, even though I'd been, but it was 4 years ahead. I'm prior, I should say, and there was a lot of new stuff on there, so there was new things I learned too. And they had speakers, subject matter speakers that knew what they were talking about and could hit the nail on the head. And I think I have slides from the finance responsibility part I want to show you, because I think, Aaron, I think you'd like that. But that was a good three days of just a lot of information to hit the ground running. And I was happy to introduce you to some people and answer questions, because it's like getting the whole truck dumped on you at once. I had my first Transportation, Communication, and Public Works meeting last week, and it was, 10 to 2. So there was a lot of time spent in that too, and finalized the agenda for what our project work year is going to look like and what we're working on. And there's a lot of things in there. Part of it touches protecting, main thing, protecting local funding, because it's very much in jeopardy, especially this year. That was also one of the things that was talked about in the new mayors and council members workshop, was protecting revenues, because the state's going to want to balance their budget on our funding. So another thing was I attended the Friends of the Library meeting, and we talked a lot about different programs and things. The movie discussion groups, book clubs from first and second graders all the way up to seniors, and things like that. A reading group for kindergartners, and it's introducing kids to reading and stories, and they enjoy it. And I know that we used to have a guy in the Parks Department who did reading at the library on his lunch hour, so it's not unheard of. Also, I attended the Roner Rec meeting, and it was, I think Councilmember Losi was there also, and well, there's a lot of things I learned during that too. And hopefully we can get it off the ground and get funding. And the last thing was, we have an HCOG meeting next week on Thursday, and I'll report out about that. So thank you.
Thank you. I had a Humboldt Transit Authority meeting, and we've got a grant for a new hydrogen bus, which they have a hydrogen filling station there. We weren't able to get them before because they didn't go the distance that we needed it, but they have upgraded those, so they go up to 350 miles on a tank, so they're going to be starting to replace their fleet with those. So that was kind of interesting. I had my Cal Safety Public Safety meeting, we went over our agenda for the year. One of the big items that they're going to be working on is Proposition 47. Efforts have been made to repeal that proposition, and they've all failed. So instead of trying to repeal it, they're going to try to fix it. So that's what they're working on. They're going to try to bring some accountability back, because people can go out and just steal what they want, write bad checks. As long as it's not over $950, they get a ticket. You know, it's a misdemeanor. And so there's no consequences for that. And, you know, and it is definitely hurting retail, you know, our retailers. They're losing so much on all of this. So that's one that we're strongly working on this year. And I hope that this, you know, this one can be successful, because something really has to get done on that. And I also did want to thank the fire department also. They did a very good job of containing that fire to one building. You know, when I went down there and saw the fire, I'm just thinking, please don't let this be another Green's Pharmacy where it takes half the block, and it didn't, it just one building, so your fire department did a great job. And I think that's all I have. What?
I left something out of my report that
Okay.
I wanted to bring up. Thank you for, Mr. Mike, for bringing up the awards for the Firefighter of the Year. But a couple other ones that, earlier this year, you may have seen a article in the Lost Coast and on Facebook about the Candy Cane Lane decorations coming up missing one morning and mysteriously reappearing a few weeks later. Well, those were done by people that received the Oxum of the Year, the Women's Auxiliary. And these people aren't actually in the Women's Auxiliary, but they were volunteers that stepped up a few years ago to redo the decorations, repaint them, rebuild some of the older ones, and get them out. So it was Rhonda Dibble and Sharon Erickson who received the Oxum of the Year for the fire department. The Citizen of the Year was another local person. Kim Brown was the Fire Citizen of the Year. She heads up the Santa Sleigh Project, which encompasses more than you just think it's just this little thing, but it's huge. And she heads that up. And we thank her for what she's done for that. And what those programs, both of those impact the community a lot. And Frank Dorr from Company 2 received the Chiefs Award this year. And all these people, some of them, they all go above and beyond just their normal duties, which is a lot. So imagine going above that. And speaking of going above that, our council member Kyle Conley spent a lot of his time at the fireman's dinner in the kitchen because his company was in charge of cooking and serving and getting things ready for the meal. So, in fact, they forgot to announce him as a council member, probably because he wasn't in the room at the time, but he went above and beyond his duties that night too. So thank you, Kyle. That's it.
Okay.
I have a quick question.
Okay.
For Merritt. The Parks and Rec meeting Monday, has that been canceled?
I believe so. That's what Cameron let me know, and I can double check on that announcement.
Yeah, he had said that that was a possibility.
Right.
but
He mentioned to me that it was canceled, but I didn't see the notice, so I'll double check on that before I go.
Okay, do we have a motion to adjourn?
A motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, meeting adjourned.
Thank you.